Hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to another session here in Reader's Magnet's featured author interview. My name is Leah, and I will be your host for today. And with me is one of the Reader's Magnet's featured author. And today, she will be sharing to us what this book is all about, her as an author, and of course, what inspired her to write this book. So, everyone, let's all welcome our one and only Miss Barbara Jane Hannon, author of the book Letters from World War II. All right. Hello, Barbara. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm thrilled to talk about my book.
Wow, and we are very excited as well, especially knowing that this book of yours talks about the story for such loving person in your life. So yeah, we're very excited to know more information about this. And Barbara, before we go over through the details about your book, maybe a little bit of self introduction. So we wanted to know who Barbara Jean Hannon is.
Well, I am not an author. I've never written a book in my life. I am a retired nurse. I
Mm.
spent 45 years in various nursing positions. And when I retired, I had all these plans, big plans, and COVID hit. And instead, I found myself writing a book that I had never planned to write. I never
Interesting.
planned
Uh-huh.
to write this book, but it was a great journey and it kind of occupied me during COVID. And I was really stunned at the story and just continued to write. And it took a lot of detective work and ended up writing this book that I really did not mean to. But
Wow, that
I am I see my parents on this journey so differently, and I am extremely proud of what my parents did during World War II. So that's why I wrote the book. I really it was just
mm,
such a journey of rediscovery. So
wow. That's interesting. And thank you so much for sharing that, Barbara. So yeah, and you know what? From the title itself, Letters from World War II, from the title it's very captivating, so that's exactly one of the reason why a lot of viewers, readers will be interested about your book, and that's also one of the reason why you are here today in this platform, Barbara. So yes, Letters from World War II. Now, can you tell us what this book is all about?
So, this book is a true story of what my parents went through during World War II. It covers 1941 to 1945. And
Wow.
it is a remarkable story in itself on what happened to my father during the war and how my mother sort of coped at home. But the story, which is part romance, it's a mystery to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what exactly happened to my dad, why he was
Mm-hmm.
missing. But the story is told pretty much through their letters to each other. They wrote over 80 letters
Wow.
to each other in those 4 years. So the story unfolds exactly how my mother went through it and found out what happened to
Mm-hmm.
him. So it's a bit of a mystery. It's a certainly a romance. It is really such a glimpse into their life, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
representative of what a lot of this generation went through in World War
Right.
II. And,
Mm-hmm.
you just cannot forget what people like my parents went through. And so that is what the story is really about. So, you
Wow.
know,
Thank you so much for that, Barbara. And you know what? Wow, I love that because you mentioned earlier the story really unfolds through the letters they
mhm,
wrote during the years of separation. And that being said, Barbara, I can see really a lot of sacrifices, the
mhm.
courage and commitment with each other. Wow. I mean, it really takes courage to, love someone. It takes bravery to keep ourselves in love for always. Wow, this is amazing. And wow, I'm having actually goosebumps right now, especially, uncovering a lot of things from the past and what really happened. How's, love during World War II. Wow. This is very interesting. Now, Barbara, that being said, how did you discover these letters? How did you come to write this book?
So, what happened was when my mother died, my sisters and I were cleaning out her house and we found two
Uh-huh.
boxes hidden way in the back of her
Wow.
closet. And one box contained all these letters, 80 letters about.
Mm,
The other box I opened and I was stunned by what was in this box. In this box were
interesting.
telegrams, there were documents from the War Department, my father's World War
Wow.
II prisoner of war documents that were all in German that I had to have
Mm-hmm.
translated. There were
Mm-hmm.
medical records, flight records. There was a commendation from Winston Churchill. There were all kinds of pictures and photos that I had never seen before. But the most interesting thing in this box is there was a number of German Reichsmarks from wartime German Reichsmarks. Then there were French francs. And I picked up this 10 franc French franc note, banknote, and I thought to myself, now just wait a minute. When was my father in France? I knew he was a prisoner of war in Germany. I knew he was in England.
Mm-hmm.
France, I was stunned. How did he get there? What was he doing there? I never knew.
Right.
So, what happened was I began to look at these documents. Some of them are, 80 years old now, and they are the telegrams from the War Department to my mother are kind of tissue papery. And I thought, I need to preserve these. But I needed to know what they were about, and I became pretty much a detective. I was so interested in what happened. So the funny thing is, my sisters and I knew a little bit about World War II. We were members of the post
Mm-hmm.
war generation. My friends'
Mm,
fathers were in the war. It was not unusual. But when we were growing up, my family celebrated Jump Day every January 11th. Every January 11th, I can see my dad today. He'd come down from upstairs and look at us in the kitchen and go, "It's Jump Day. Let's have pancakes." It was very funny. But,
wow, that's cute. Mm-hmm.
as young kids, what we knew about Jump Day was that our dad jumped out of an airplane with a parachute and he landed in the snow and he buried his parachute in the snow. And then he was chased down by what he called the German police. And he was in a prison camp.
Mm-hmm.
That basically
I
is what we knew as young kids.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know why it was on a plane or why he had to
Mm-hmm.
jump out. And German policemen, when we were growing up, our dad told us, police, good. If you are in trouble, find a policeman. So I had no sense really growing up that there was
Mm-hmm.
anything horrible about this. In fact, my dad would always say, when I was in prison camp, but he never used the word prison, it was always prison camp. And when we
Mm-hmm.
asked him about it, he would say, well, we lived in cabins and slept on bunk beds and we cooked our own food over a
Mm.
stove and it was near the sea and it was sandy and we used to dig
Wow.
tunnels. As
Uh-huh.
kids, doesn't that sound
Yeah,
like summer camp? That was our reference.
exactly.
Well, our dad, I guess, summer camp. But we
Mm-hmm.
really didn't know the story because my parents did not talk about it. They were not different
Mm-hmm.
than other people of their
Mm-hmm.
generation. It was horrible. And once it
Mhm.
was over, my parents put it behind them. They didn't want to dredge it up. They certainly
Mhm.
were protective of us. They didn't want us
Mhm.
to
Right.
know maybe that they had lived through something. But I
Exactly.
did not know. I did not know the story. And one of the first things that I discovered is I saw the telegram to my mom that was on January 23rd, 1944, that said,
Whoa.
the Secretary of War regrets to inform you that your husband, Lieutenant George Hannon, has been missing over Germany since January 11th.
Whoa.
She got that telegram on the 23rd of January, and I looked at the date, 1944. You know, knowing the war was over in 1945, I
Mhm.
was, wait, wait a minute. My dad was in this prison camp for 16 months. I didn't know that. I thought maybe a summer. I didn't know.
Mhm. Right. Just a
And
vacation, just, doing some stuff on work. Wow.
yeah,
Go ahead, Barbara.
I didn't know. And I then found the second telegram, and it was February 17th, which said the Secretary of War would like to inform you that your husband has been reported a prisoner of the Germans. That was that was February 17th. My mother
Mhm.
did not know for 37 days if my dad was dead or alive.
Still
And
alive.
I thought about my mother. She taught high school while he was in the war every day, getting up, going to school, doing those chores of life. And my
Mhm.
dad was missing, and she did not know if he was dead or alive. And
Right.
I thought about my mother and what just that. And then I began to put together this timeline, this timeline. And I suddenly realized in 4 years, from 1941 to 1945, my parents spent 3 weeks physically together. All the rest of the time, they were separated. My father was in England, then he was shot
Mhm.
down and a prisoner of war. But 4 years. And in the letters, the most poignant letters to me, every Christmas Eve, no matter where they were, they wrote each other a letter. And the letter said the same thing. You know, darling, I hope this is our last Christmas apart.
Mhm.
I think we'll be together next Christmas, and then we'll be together forever. And another Christmas came and another Christmas went, and still they were apart. So I I just began to read these letters with such interest, and I was really
Right.
stunned by my parents, the way they coped with this, their strength, their commitment. You know, I said to my sister Peggy, you know, my mom didn't run away and marry somebody else. She stayed like glue. And every one of her letters is nothing but hope and positive energy and hope for the future and everything. You know, not once in 80 letters, I will tell you this, in 80 letters, is there ever a word of rage, anger? Nothing. Just this positive, this love for each other, this positive
Mhm.
view of the future. I am really, really impressed by my parents, and I feel for what they went through. And I had to do a lot of detective work to find out what it was like for my dad to be
Right.
flying these planes over Germany and being chased around by German fighter pilots and shot at, what it was like in this horrific prison camp. And I thought of my dad, you know, and I am so proud of his courage his bravery, and my mom sticking next to him and looking at the future. So I wrote the book and thought, this is a lesson for all time. This is how you can deal with adversity, with
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of
Right.
letters.
Right.
And I think about my parents. I could have asked them, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't talk about it, and I didn't think to. And I wrote this book so that no one will ever forget what people like my parents did for this country, the way they handled with such courage. It's a timeless story.
Right.
And
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So that's why I wrote it. And I, of course, get very emotional talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable what they went through. You'll have to read the book. You'll
Right.
have to read the
Mm-hmm.
mystery on how my dad did get to France. That's
Exactly. And you know
a
what, Barbara?
fascinating story.
Right, and you know what, Barbara? It's like I'm actually having goosebumps right now. Sharing with all the experience I've had from the past during World War II, their love story, the courage, the sacrifices. And I mean, you're actually living like in a suspense movie. Looking
Mhm,
for clues, red herrings, and wow, this is very amazing, and it's really interesting. And you know what? When it talks about courage, especially when you love someone, it really you know that your love for someone will really sustain, and you can actually face all the dangers, how you deal with threatening
oh,
situations, and at the
mhm,
same time sustain yourself against impossible odds. This is because with this love, I must say that the person is really emboldened, and
yeah,
confident. Wow. And
here they
also
are.
about the letters,
Here
right?
they are.
Well, yeah, that's the book, everyone. Thank you so much for that, Barbara. And you
This
know
is
what?
their wedding
Especially,
picture. This is their wedding
that's
picture.
your with. Wow, that's your wedding picture. Wow,
Mhm,
and your mom and dad is very beautiful. Wow, they look so good together. That's lovely. And you know what, Barbara? About the love letters, because again, it's really a discovery after everything. After all, I mean, love letters. Accenture the. I must say that accenture the importance of openness and positivity of intimate relationship. You
mhm,
know, and wow, it's actually the most important thing that we can do as a society right now is to really first and foremost change ourselves and thus influence
mhm,
the microenvironment in which we live in. I
mhm.
mean, it's really the time for love, everyone. And
It is.
also, I like how your mom also keep all the old love letters, all the documents, because they really do have a sentimental value, right? And that, I mean, past could really have some part in who you are today, who they are today. I mean, those letters can tell a lot about that person, which also allows them to really reflect on their, past selves. And I must say that with this story, Barbara, I don't think that it's really necessary to toss away some of our happiest moments from our past. And wow,
I agree.
this is this is truly inspirational, Barbara.
I agree.
Now, right now, also, Barbara, I wanted to take this opportunity to say to the people, why would you want them to read this book?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that this is a lesson for all time in how
Mm-hmm.
to deal with really horrible adversity, how to approach
Right.
it. And, you know, the other thing is it's a very historic story. This is a time
Mm-hmm.
that we can't imagine, lack of information, where my mother knew nothing. It's not like somebody, took a picture and posted it on Instagram. She didn't know.
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
also think it's worth reading because people don't write these kinds of letters to each other anymore. It,
And that's very true. Mm-hmm.
it they don't. And the depth of these letters, and their willingness to talk about their innermost feelings in these letters so that
Right.
they really could share with each other how they were doing. I also think that it's important to read about this generation. We cannot forget people like my parents and their
Mm-hmm.
generation, what they did, their commitment, their unbelievable sacrifice today, without
Right.
question, their sacrifice for this country. I think it's worth reading. And it's worth reading because it's kind of a heartwarming story in the end. And it's a good
It is.
mystery. And it is a lesson in history, what happened to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote it hoping people would learn a little bit more about World War II and this wonderful
Right.
generation that they represent. So,
Right, and thank you so much for that, Barbara. And you know what, Barbara? I mean, there's really a time that I believe that you're very curious on what happened, especially you wanted to ask question, with your mom, what really happened. I mean,
mhm,
we cannot really, blame her if she don't wanted to share or to go back and cover things from the past. Because again, it would I mean, our past experience can really affect our current mindset and our choices in life. No, I mean, how do we interpret the situation? If pain or trauma has been experienced in our past, then somehow I must say that it can also impact how we view our current circumstances or
mhm.
even prevent us from, living in the present. But again, there's a reason for everything. And right now, it's already a good thing. It's really a discovery after all. I mean,
It
I
is.
really a Barbara.
You
And
know,
wow, it's
the
I'm
other
sorry.
extremely interesting thing about this whole process is that my mother died at the age of 93. She made a
Oh.
huge effort before she died to get rid of 60 years worth of stuff in her house. And she did not get rid of either of these boxes. She didn't.
Hmm.
And I think, and my sisters think, that she left them for us. And she left them
Right.
because I think while she was alive, she just couldn't talk about it. But I think she wanted us to read the letters and she wanted us to know. And
Exactly.
I do. And
Hmm.
that was a stunning discovery. She left these for her daughters so we would know. So,
Right.
so I wrote
Well,
her
you're getting
story.
emotional, Barbara. I can see that, and I mean, there's really nothing wrong with this. I mean, I also love, how your mom really left all these letters, these documents from the past, and there's really a reason why she's not really, discussing things from the past, and right now you've already uncovered it because there's really something for you, for your siblings, for right time, right reason. And wow, it's just so amazing. I'm actually having goosebumps right now, Barbara. And yes, Barbara, thank you so much for that, for sharing your whole experience with, Reader's Magnet, the love story of your mom about what happened during the World War II. And wow, this is really amazing for letting us to be part of this journey, and we thank you so much, Barbara. And yes, before we end our interview, will you please show your book to our viewers? All right, there you have it, everyone. Uh-huh. Thank you so much, Barbara. Letters from World War II. And again, the author's name is Barbara Jane Hannon. And everyone, for those who are watching, the book of Barbara Jane Hannon is available on Amazon.com and Barnes& and Noble. So please do follow her on all the social media platform as well so that you'd be able to know further information about this book, who she is as an author, and of course, what this book is really all about. And thank you so much, Barbara. As we say it here in Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.